Well, everyone, we've made it to the regular season, and the Pittsburgh Penguins are set to open the 24-25 season at home against the New York Rangers on Wednesday, and Pat and I are going to preview that game for you all right after this.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Hunter Hodes. You can follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes, joined by my co-host, Patrick Damp. You can follow him on Twitter at SendThemForWet, and you can follow the show's Twitter at LO_Penguins. Of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen/watch of the day. We are free and available on all platforms. And finally, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. And Pat, buddy, welcome to the Thunderdome, my friend. We have made it to the regular season. The 24-25 season started on Tuesday with a bang. The Blues came back to beat the Seattle Kraken in the first game. We're actually recording this during the Bruins-Panthers game, so that'll end well after this episode is done recording, but we wanted to have this preview out for you all first thing on Wednesday to get you all set for Penguins-Rangers opening night for the Penguins at PBG Paints Arena, 7:30 p.m. start time on TNT, and I'm fired up for this one. It's always fun when you get to go up against a divisional rival to start the season, especially one in the Rangers, where I think that is the Penguins' top rival right now. It's been going kind of in circles these last few years. There's times where the Capitals have been at the top. There's been times where the Flyers have been at the top. I would even argue the Islanders at times as well. But these last few years, it very much has been the New York Rangers. And speaking of the Rangers, this is a team that is very much in it to win it this year. Bona fide Stanley Cup contender. They are the number one seed in the Eastern Conference last year before falling to the Florida Panthers in the Eastern Conference final. And this team, I really think it might be cup or bust for them. This is, I think, the last year where they're truly all in with this core. I think they would make some changes if they don't go all the way this year. I think they'll keep the main guys intact. But with this group, I feel like because they brought basically everyone back, this is really the last year for this one, I would say. And they have a contract situation right now with Igor Shesterkin. Kevin Weeks reported on Tuesday that he had declined 8 times 11. In other words, 8 years, $88 million. In my opinion, I think he's looking for 12 to 12.5 million, and he deserves it considering he's the best goaltender in the league, but they have that to deal with. You look at the Rangers lines heading into this game. Artemi Panarin with Vince Trocheck, Alexei Lafreniere, Chris Kreider, Penguin killer, by the way, Mika Zibanejad, Riley Smith, former Penguin, and if you are a betting person, you can probably pencil him in for maybe a goal against his former team because it feels like every former Penguin scores against the Penguins at some point in their careers. Will Cooley, Philip Hedl, and Capo Caco on the third line, and then Sam Carrick, Matt Rempe, and Adam Enstrom on the fourth line. And defensively, Keandre Miller, Adam Fox, Braden Schneider, Jacob Trouba, Zach Jones, and then Victor Mancini on the bottom pairing. And then, of course, you have Shesterkin in net. So, again, very strong forward group. They were fine defensively last year, but I think the main thing here with this game, my big key to victory, stay out of the box. You do not want to give the Rangers power plays. They were third in the NHL last year in power play percentage. We saw them kind of cook the Penguins in those 3 games, at least on the power play at times. Their movement is so crisp. They have a very good shoot-first mentality. Chris Kreider lives around the net mouth, and he loves scoring on those deflections, not even just against the Penguins, but against everyone in the NHL. But my first key to victory, my man, stay out of the box.
Absolutely. I like you said it already, that third best power play in the National Hockey League last season, and they have an absurd amount of talent up front on this roster. I know that you look at their forward group, right? And obviously Artemi Panarin leads the way. He is one of the best wingers in hockey, one of the best goal scorers around. He's just such a dynamic player. But while a lot of those names in their forward group may not jump off the page at you, you don't sit there and think, oh, superstar, superstar, superstar. These are just guys who produce just consistently. They put up points. They score goals. You don't think of a workman-like mentality when you think of the New York Rangers. The New York Rangers, very similarly to the Pittsburgh Penguins, are a franchise that when you think about them, you think star power. But this current iteration for the last few years of the New York Rangers have been borderline workman-like. They just go out, take care of business, beat you, and move on. So, you joked about it a little bit at the start. We're like, welcome to Thunderdome. Well, guess what? No tougher way to start the Penguins season this year than to open up with the New York Rangers, because this is a damn good team. If you listen to our episode on Tuesday, you heard my take at the end that I think this is a team that's going to come out of the East in the playoffs this year. And you also hinted at it again. So thank you, Hunter, for being a listener of the Locked On Penguins podcast. We appreciate that. But this is a team where you can see, aside from just the Igor Shesterkin contract drama right now, this is a team that knows this is probably it for this group. Yeah, the big names are going to stick around, just like most franchises where your mainstays will be here. But everybody around them, there's going to be very tough decisions for Chris Drury coming up, especially with whatever contract they sign Shesterkin to and how they can fill out the roster around him, who they can keep, who they're going to get rid of. So this team, along with getting to the Eastern Conference final last year, knows that this is probably the last shot for this group together. So they're going to be highly motivated. Mix that with having that much talent. To put a fine point on what you said, don't take stupid penalties tonight. If you take dumb penalties, the New York Rangers are going to make you pay. And while the Penguins have consistently had a solid penalty kill for the last decade or so under Mike Sullivan, when you play a team like the Rangers, it doesn't matter how good your penalty kill is. Like Thanos, the New York Rangers power play is inevitable.
Right. And Fox is so great at walking the blue line. You have Zibanejad's one-timer from the circle, which is also deadly. It's not at, obviously, Ovechkin's level, but it's still very good. And Panarin...
It's not Ovechkin's level, but I'll say this much. If there's a comparable, it's Zibanejad, because when he sets up in that office, when he gets open and gets those looks, you can try your best to stop it, but it's going to happen.
The comp is either him or Stamkos. I'll definitely throw Stamkos in there. His one-timer is also...
They're in that second tier. It's not obviously Ovechkin rules. He is the top guy. He sits in his office. He scores those one-timers. But guys like Stamkos, guys like Zibanejad, they're a level down. But you give them time, you give them space, they will make you pay.
Not a level down by that much, that's for sure. Then you have Panarin, he's going all over the ice. Hell of a playmaker, great sniper. Vince Trocheck, great in front of the net area. And he's also really good in the slot area too. Honestly, both Kreider and Trocheck are great in front of the net. Kreider is definitely more of the net front guy, but Trocheck can also go there too. But he's also great in the slot too. You do not want to play into, whatever. For example, if Trouba does something dumb tomorrow, don't play into that. Matt Rempe, he'll obviously throw the body around as well. Just don't play into that at all. We'll get into some more keys to victory coming up in the second segment, but I just really wanted to start with that. You got to keep this game, I feel like, to 5-on-5, because the Rangers, they're pretty pedestrian at 5-on-5. These last few years, their 5-on-5 numbers are kind of just okay overall. So if you can keep the game to that, while the Penguins maybe getting the special teams advantage with the new look power play, again, I'll like their chances at least a little bit more in this game, even though they will be an underdog overall. And you said it about also this kind of being, the last hurrah for this group. I mean, you look at, Puckpedia now, Panarin only has a year left on his contract after this year. He's a free agent 26-27. You have Capo Caco. He's an RFA after this year. Lafreniere, he's going to probably get a big pay raise on his contract as well after this season. And then defensively, Keandre Miller, you have Ryan Lindgren as well. They have a ton of decisions to make on a lot of other players, even outside of Shesterkin, salary cap wise. So if they don't do it this year, I do think you're going to see quite a few new faces for the Rangers next year overall.
You really will. And I think, and this is more just a broad comment, not just Rangers specific, but we can take it back to the Rangers. simply because of who Lafreniere is. If you look at 3 consecutive drafts, 2019, 2020, and 2021, we do have to factor in what an absolute wrench in the machine the pandemic was, because we were all ready to toss Alexis Lafreniere into the trash bin and say, he's a bust, he's terrible. But when you think about a lot of the guys who were drafted in that 3-year window, their developments got completely derailed, whether it was not getting time to play in the pros, in the American League or the NHL or even the ECHL. And then the same thing with juniors, where the junior leagues shut down as well, or they were playing these very bizarre, like home at home schedules. It threw a lot of guys' developments into flux, and it was going to take them a little bit longer to get up to speed. And as we saw last year, Lafreniere turned into a player who we kind of all expected he would be, but it took a little bit longer just because of how messed up development became. And now he is one of their better players and looking very much like a guy that you want to lock up long-term, keep him in your franchise, and he will continue to be an absolute menace and a thorn in the side of the Penguins for years to come. So similarly to what you were saying about the power play, him and Panarin are 2 guys you cannot let take over this game tonight, because if you do, they are going to absolutely make you pay, and it's going to be a nightmare if you can't neutralize them.
And same thing with Kreider. I mean, again, we all know he's crushed the Penguins so many times throughout his career, so you got to also shut him down too if the Penguins want to win this game. But I think that'll do it for this first segment. Coming up in the second segment, we're going to look at some more keys to victory for the Penguins and also look at the lines the Penguins, it looks like, will be debuting for this game against the Rangers. But before we get to that, we have to tell you all about our first sponsor, and that is Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. They filter out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't even have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. There's all-in pricing that toggles. That feature shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Also, seat views, you can get a full view from your seat in the app before you buy. They also have the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. One more thing, they have Game Time ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, we're back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Hunter Hodes, joined by my co-host, Patrick Gambin. Speaking of game time, it very much is game time for the Penguins and the Rangers. One more key to victory, at least that I have, Pat, before I throw this over to you for your keys. Got to get net traffic in front of Shesterkin. The Penguins, they are usually very good at getting traffic in front of him and also kind of rattling Shesterkin. I know Shesterkin definitely has moments where you see him get mad at certain players, certain teams. Penguins are definitely one of those teams that he gets riled at. I mean, we've seen him and Sidney Crosby go at it quite a few times over these last few years. I'm sure that's going to be no different in this game tonight. But they want to win this game. They got to make it a living hell in front of the net. You saw that during the playoff series a couple of years ago. Yes, I know the Penguins lost that series, but when they were playing their best in that series, they had him rattled. They had him seeing ghosts. They chased him. You got to get that type of net front traffic if you want to win this game. And that means big game from Michael Bunting with how much of a rat he is. And I'll throw Jesse Puljujarvi in there with what we saw during the preseason. I want to see him go to the net and make it a living hell in front of Shesterkin as well. So that's another big key for me for the Penguins if they want to win this game.
Right. And you kind of took away what I was going to start with, and that is to, like you said, make life a living hell for Igor Shesterkin tonight. And I look at players like the 2 you brought up, Michael Bunting, Jesse Puljujarvi, get in his kitchen, make life annoying for him. Another guy I'd watch for do that, and he's going to be in a top line role likely tonight, and that's Anthony Beauvillier. He is a speed player. He is a little bit more of a gritty player. Like, you don't think of Anthony Beauvillier as your classic gritty guy, but he's not afraid to go where you got to go to score goals. We saw that in all those years he was a thorn in the Penguins' side with the Islanders. A lot of his goals weren't finesse goals. He was 4, 5, 6, 7 feet in front of the net. He was a pest in front. That's what you have to do against them. And you said it as well. The Penguins have a great history, especially against the New York Rangers, at torturing their goalies. We think back to Henrik Lundqvist. We think all the way back, for people of a certain vintage, Mike Richter. They have made a living making these great New York Rangers goalies look human. So that is a huge factor tonight. And I do think if you get to him early, whether it's just peppering him with a few shots, getting in front of him, hacking at a couple rebounds, you're going to get in his head a little bit, because the Penguins kind of are his kryptonite. Yeah, they won that series 2 years ago, but this is a guy who seemingly is able to be a brick wall and unbeatable against 30 other NHL teams. But he comes to Pittsburgh, and for whatever reason, they have his number. So if you can get to him early, a lot of shots, some traffic, poke at him a little bit, that seed of doubt is planted in his head of, what is it about this Pittsburgh team that every time I come here, they're always in my face, and it gets him off his game. So that is a huge thing for me. We have been talking, and another thing, we have been talking about this for about a week now. It looks like it's going to happen tonight. Rutger McGroarty, Lars Eller, Jesse Puljujarvi. You showed some great chemistry in the preseason. It looked like there is some real potential there with that line. I want to see them put their mark in the regular season now. Do they have to go out and light it up? No, but have effective shifts. Spend some extended time in the offensive zone. If you manage to pop in a goal or two, I'm certainly not going to complain, but start building something here. Start showing that the chemistry we saw in the preseason, the effectiveness we saw out of you the last couple of games of the preseason wasn't just, hey, we're playing against JV teams and we're trying to get to the end of training camp. Make this a thing. And by all accounts, Rutger McGroarty's ready. You look at his quote today when he got asked about what's it like to make the team. As much as I want NHL players to start showing personality, there is a soft spot in my heart for a guy like Rutger McGroarty, who has a lot of hype, a lot of potential, treating it like he's been there before. He basically said, yeah, it's exciting. This is where you want to be. I want to be an NHL player, but at the end of the day, it's hockey. That's right. You've been doing this all your life, man. This is where you expected to be. This is where you want to be. Do I expect a huge game out of them? No, but just like the preseason, don't look overwhelmed. Look like you belong there and make it a great first building block for hopefully an effective and fantastic NHL career.
Now that you said that, watch him go out there and score the first goal of the season for the Penguins, just because, again, you said that on the show, right? So, but yeah, speaking of that line, it looks like that is going to be the third line. And I agree with you. After what they did in the preseason, I know very small sample, and you're doing it against, I feel like, a lot of backups. Now it's time to see what you can do against the Rangers varsity squad when the games are for real now. And I'm curious to see how it does. The other lines, Drew O'Connor with Sidney Crosby and Anthony Beauvillier. No surprise there, especially with Brian Rust out, though. Good news, Brian Rust returned to practice on Tuesday. No contact capacity, so he's probably going to start taking some contact here at some point. I would imagine, and this is just a guess here, people, I would imagine that he'll be back within the next week and a half overall. I don't think this is going to be too long, so he'll be back pretty soon. But that's the top line right now. Third line, we already discussed. Second line, Bunting with Malkin and Raquel. And then the fourth line, Kevin Hayes with Cody Glass and Noah Chari. It looks like, at least based off practice on Tuesday and then heading into Wednesday, that Cody Glass is going to be taking the reps at fourth line center. But if I also had to guess, I think they're going to kind of rotate Glass and Hayes throughout this game just because they both can play center and wing. But again, good to see Achari getting some time on the wing. And then defensively, Matt Grzelcyk, Crystal Tang, Marcus Pettersson, Erik Karlsson, and then Ryan Graves and Jack St. Ivany. No surprise there with the defensive pairings. And, this is, at least for Ryan Graves, he's thinking this. We're not thinking this, but he's thinking this. It's the potentially for him the start of a little bit of redemption after how bad he was last year. I know that he wants to go out there and prove, I think, to, especially both of us and the entire fan base that last year wasn't him. And well, he gets one hell of a test right out of the gate against a Stanley Cup juggernaut in the Rangers. But overall, no surprise with any of those lines.
Not at all. And to the Ryan Graves point of it, we obviously on this show were not kind to Ryan Graves last year because he didn't deserve it. He was a disaster for this team. But I think we both acknowledged and noticed that at the end of the year, when paired with Jack St. Ivany, he was starting to look a little bit better. Now, was that bar all that difficult to clear? No, because he struggled mightily last year. But similar to what Josh Yohe wrote about earlier this week, I want to see him build on that. This is not going to be an overnight process. This is not going to be an overnight fix. He's not going to suddenly turn into the defenseman he was with the Devils or with the Avalanche in a matter of a week. This is going to take a little while. It might take a month, it might take 2, but again, building blocks. Go out, make some solid plays, look like you're getting better, make smart decisions. I don't want you to become, and I'm not expecting you to become the best defenseman on the team right away, but continue to show that pairing has some juice. Make smart plays, make solid defensive plays, and just essentially be a bottom pairing. I barely want to notice you tonight. I barely want to talk about you. Unless you make a great play, I want to come on here on Thursday and go, they're fine. And I want them to start banking that every few games. Hey, you know what? They're playing well. They're playing solid. They're playing consistently. And if they can do that starting tonight, again, I'm not ready to say Ryan Graves is back and all of a sudden he's fixed, but start putting that in the bank. Start having consistent performances and continue to build on it, and I'll be happy.
Right. He's going to have quite a few performances, back to back to back to back to back, and then some for me to be fully saying, okay, we might have something here with Graves on the bottom pairing. But overall, I agree. If I don't really notice him in this game heading into the second game on Thursday against the Red Wings, I will take that as a win overall. But I think that'll do it for the second segment. Coming up in the final segment, we're going to discuss a couple more things relating to the Penguins-Rangers matchup, including how the Penguins power play could potentially perform against the Rangers penalty kill, which was also a very good unit last year. The Rangers penalty kill was 3rd overall in the league last year, so the Penguins power play will be getting quite the test to open the season. But before we get to that, we have to tell you all about our last sponsor, and that is FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That is FanDuel.com. All right, we're back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Hunter Hodes, joined by my co-host, Patrick Dam. So we've discussed it a little bit throughout the week just because the Penguins are bringing in sort of a new look on the power play, and that is Chris Letang with Erik Karlsson together on the same unit. And I know there are some people out there that really don't like it. People are going to say, okay, you should still split them up, blah, blah, blah. At this point, though, I'm willing to try anything to get the power play up to speed for this year, considering how awful it was last year. Mike Sullivan even said before last season, we're ready to unleash Erik Karlsson and Chris Letang on the same power play unit. And they barely got any minutes together, it felt like, throughout the season. So I am more than willing to at least try it out this season for several games. If it doesn't work, you can obviously switch back to Karlsson running one unit and Letang running the other unit. But I am totally fine with the Penguins power play as is, just like player-wise on the top unit, because, you got to figure this out at some point. If I'm Mike Sullivan and them, I have Chris Letang running the point, and I have Karlsson in the Kessel spot, both as a playmaker and as a one-time threat. The Penguins really haven't had a threat like Kessel in that spot, I mean, honestly, since he left, to be honest. So I am more than willing for this team to at least, try to recapture that magic. I mean, Kessel he didn't have a one-time threat per se, but his release from that spot was just so good when he would get the puck. His playmaking skills were so good when he got the puck. Again, he didn't have that good of a one-timer, but as a threat in that spot, he was so deadly. And the Penguins haven't had a threat like that since he left. With Karlsson, I want him to at least try to be a little bit of that on this power play. Obviously, get traffic to the net, more movement, shot first mentality, all that stuff. But this is still going to be a pretty big test against, at least from last year, one of the top penalty killing units in the league.
It will be. And I will say this for Mike Sullivan last year saying we're ready to unleash Karlsson and Letang on the top power play. The injury to Letang and the way he was performing down the stretch, you didn't want to give him those those minutes just because of everything else going on. So the opportunity really never actually presented itself. So this year you get the opportunity to do it. And we kind of talked about this in the first segment. If you're the Penguins, the Rangers power play is one that you want to try to emulate because yeah, they have all those threats, but what have I been talking about for the entire preseason and training camp? The power play needs to have movement, it needs to have urgency, and it needs to be in attack mode for the entire time it's in the offensive zone. And that describes the Rangers power play to a T. They are constantly moving. They are constantly looking for mismatches, and they are attacking. Everything finishes at the net. Everything they do leads to, we want to get a shot in front with traffic and find those mismatches in front of the net. So if you're the Penguins power play, just watch the tape of the Rangers power play from last year and just go, do that. So this is a huge challenge for them because we know how good the Rangers special teams were last year. So the Penguins, wow, yes, it's one of 82. It's not, you're not going to win the Stanley Cup tonight. You're not going to lose it tonight either. But if you can go out and win the special teams battle in your first game against a team that was in the top 3 of both last year, that sends a little bit of a message that, hey, we are starting to figure some things out here. We're starting to turn that corner. So if they can go out and do that tonight, I will be extremely encouraged at what this team could do this year.
Agreed, 100%. And just for some history with Penguins and Rangers, of course. So Penguins have points in 17 of their last 26 games against the Rangers. They're 14-9-3 in those games. And they're also 18-11-3 in their last 32 games against the Rangers. Also, this is only the third time the Penguins have ever opened this season against the Rangers. The last time, October 2nd, 2009, a 3-2 Penguins win after the Penguins won the Cup that year. But Pat, do you have anything else to add about this game overall before we let go?
Well, I watched that banner go up. See it back there? Yeah,
I see it. I see it.
I was at that game against the Rangers, and that was a lot of fun just because seeing that Stanley Cup banner go up and seeing Crosby and company get there first was awesome. But my last thing for tonight's game against the Rangers, we kind of talked about it a little bit, but didn't really touch on it. If you're the Penguins tonight, do not let Matt Rempe be a factor. Let him run around. Let him be an idiot. Let him take penalties. When he's trying to goad you into doing something stupid, just poke him back and just go, you're a flavor of the month, kid. Have your fun, and let him go to the box and make them pay on the power play. So at the end of the day, I mean, we've talked it to death, all the things you got to do with Igor Shesterkin, everything else. So really excited because we finally made it. Hockey season's here. And before we close out the show, I just want to give a quick shout out to my best friend DJ and his 2 sons, Charlie and Henry. I'm wearing the Uncle Pat jersey they got me a couple years ago for Christmas because since they got me this jersey a couple years ago, every home opener, every season opener, I toss this on just because those guys mean so much to me and they are just the absolute best people in the world. So excited to get through another hockey season with everybody, including them. So here we are, man. It's hockey season.
We've made it, man. I'm so excited to finally watch regular season hockey for the first time in several months, and I'm excited to get this thing rolling at this point. And for those wondering, Warrior Helmet Wednesday will return this season. It'll make its debut again next Wednesday. We're not going to do a Warrior helmet for the preseason. We'll do a Warrior helmet for the first time again for this season after a full week's worth of games. But again, that'll do it for this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. Thank you all so much for taking the time to listen to / watch this one. Pat and I will be back with another episode for you all on Thursday to recap this game against the Rangers and get you all set for Penguins Red Wings, which is now an 8 p.m. start time because of the Tigers playoff game. And then on Friday, we'll be recapping that game for you all and getting you guys set for Penguins Maple Leafs on Saturday. So for Patrick Damp, I am Hunter Hodes. Thank you all so much for tuning in. We appreciate it. We'll be back on Thursday.